When she walked into the kitchen that morning, I knew something was wrong. Her face wasn't angry. It was pale, drained, like all the light had been pulled out of her. She didn't even look at me when she said, in a voice that trembled, "Mom, what did you do?" The coffee in my hand turned cold. It's strange how moments like that, the ones that shatter your life, Dante, come with thunder. They come with silence, a kind of silence that hums in your bones. I didn't answer her. I couldn't. My throat was dry, my hands shaking. She laid the paper on the counter, the DNA test results, and all I could do was stare at the name beside biological father, Ethan Miller, my brother. Before that day, our lives looked ordinary, maybe even happy. We lived in a small house just outside Lexington, a creaky 2-story home with fading blue paint and hydrangeas that bloomed too early every spring. I worked at the library. My daughter Leela was studying nursing at the community college. We had our routines, shared breakfasts, late-night talks, small arguments about laundry and dishes. People said we were close, more like friends than mother and daughter. They didn't know how much I needed that closeness, because I'd built our entire world on a secret. When Lila was little, she had this habit of humming when she was deep in thought. Ethan used to do that too. Our mother would laugh and say, "You two are made of the same cloth." Back then, it was just an innocent family resemblance. Now, every time she hummed, it felt like a ghost brushing my ear. Ethan was 2 years older than me. He was the wild one, charming, reckless, always a little too free. When our parents died, it was just the two of us for a while. We leaned on each other sometimes too much. I don't know how to explain that summer without sounding monstrous. But I was 23, grieving, lonely, and drunk, on the comfort of someone who felt like home. It wasn't supposed to happen. It wasn't love. Not really. It was a moment of pain disguised as warmth. When I found out I was pregnant, Ethan had already left for a construction job in another state. I told no one. I told myself the father was an ex-boyfriend, a story that grew so rehearsed it became real. By the time Leela was born, Ethan was married and I was a single mother. And I thought foolishly that the past would stay buried. But secrets have a strange scent. You can cover them with flowers, prayers, and lies. But eventually someone catches a whiff. It started small, Leela's college biology project, tracing genetic traits. She joked about how she and I both had hazel eyes, but no one else in our family tree did. Then she noticed how she and Uncle Ethan had the same dimple when they smiled. I laughed it off, maybe a little too quickly. She squinted at me, half amused, half curious. "Mom, did you and Uncle Ethan have some weird twin gene or something?" My heart stuttered. "We're just siblings, honey. That's all." She let it go for that day. Still, from that moment, I felt her watching me differently. Not suspicion yet, just curiosity turning over in her mind like a stone she couldn't stop touching. That night, after she went to bed, I sat on the back porch. The cicadas were singing that deep Kentucky summer hum, and I stared into the dark fields behind the house. I remember whispering to the night, "Please, let it stay buried." I thought I'd earned peace. I'd worked hard, raised her with love, made a quiet life. Didn't that count for something? Didn't love outweigh the sin? But love doesn't erase truth. It only delays it. One afternoon, Lila came home with a DNA test kit, one of those ancestry things everyone was doing. She said it was for fun to see if we had Irish roots or something. I smiled too widely and said, "Sure, why not?" For weeks after, I tried not to think about it. I told myself those tests weren't perfect, that maybe it would show a cousin, maybe even Ethan, but she'd never suspect anything more. But then she started asking questions. What was Dad like? Why don't I have any baby pictures of you two together? I gave her the same script I'd used for years. He wasn't ready to be a father. We weren't close. It always worked before, but not this time. She was older now, sharper, and the internet had taught her too much. The day the results came, she was quiet at first. I thought maybe she'd forgotten about it, but then I saw her sitting on the couch, phone in hand, face drained of color. She looked up at me and said, "Mom, this says Uncle Ethan is my closest match, closer than a normal uncle would be." I tried to play dumb. "Oh, those things can be wrong, sweetheart," but she didn't buy it. Her voice rose, not angry, but terrified. "Mom, it says he could be my father." The room swayed. I remember gripping the arm of the sofa, the world spinning in slow motion. I wanted to lie. God knows I wanted to. But her eyes, they were pleading, desperate for truth. And so I told her, piece by piece. In a trembling voice, I unraveled the story I'd hidden for 21 years. About that night, the grief, the loneliness, the shame. I told her I didn't know until after she was born. That when I realized I wanted to protect her from it, from me, she didn't cry at first. She just stared at me like I was a stranger sitting in her mother's skin. Then, slowly, she said, "You knew, and you still let me love him like an uncle?" Her voice cracked on that word uncle, and something inside me broke open. She left that night with a suitcase. Didn't say where she was going, didn't answer my calls for weeks. For the first time in my life, the house was silent. Even the clock seemed to tick softer. I walked through her empty room, touching the little things she'd left behind. The hairbrush, the candle she never lit, the folded sweater that still smelled faintly of her perfume. And in that quiet, I felt the full weight of my sin. Not the act itself, but the years of pretending it never happened. The lie had eaten through every good thing I'd built until there was nothing left but ashes. The first week without her, I learned the shapes of my own footsteps. The floorboards complained in places I'd never noticed. The kettle whistled longer because no one rushed to catch it. Mail piled on the foyer table, 2 flyers slid to the floor and stayed there. Like I was waiting for a second pair of hands that wouldn't come. On the 8th day, I called Ethan. I hadn't said his name out loud since the night Leela left. Even thinking it felt like swallowing glass. He answered on the 3rd ring. Voice, warm, distracted. The sound of someone who believes his life is intact. "Hey, little sis," he said. "Everything okay?" For a second, I almost hung up. I stood in the kitchen with my hand braced on the edge of the counter, looking at the old smudge of blueberry jam near the sink. Leela always teased me for missing. "Ethan," I said, "we need to talk. It's about Lila." Silence slipped between us. A change in air pressure I could feel through the line. "What's wrong? She's sick. Is this about her tuition?" "She took a DNA test," I said. A breath, a low, disbelieving laugh, like he'd misheard me. "Those ancestry toys? They're a scam, Nora. Don't get yourself worked up. It matched you," I said, closer than an uncle should. She confronted me. I heard him move a chair, scraping. A door shutting somewhere like he was trying to step away from other ears. When he spoke again, his voice was a tight whisper. "What did you tell her? The truth?" Another silence. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ear, the rush of blood like whined down a long hallway. I thought he started, then stopped. When he tried again, the words came out hoarse. "I thought we buried that summer. Nora, I did too," I said. "But it was foolish. Wrong. All of it. She left. I don't know where she is." Left panic bled into his voice. "Nora, I have to see you today." We met at a diner off Route 60. The kind that still has a pie carousel and a waitress who calls you hun. The air smelled like burnt coffee and syrup. And somewhere behind the counter, a radio murmured 80s ballads no one was listening to. He came in wearing that gray jacket he always wore, the collar frayed. He looked tired. Older than the last time I let myself really look at him. His eyes found me, then slid away, then back. That telltale stutter of someone bracing for impact. We didn't hug. He slid into the booth opposite and placed his hands flat on the formica as if to steady the table, the room, himself. "Tell me everything." I did. The kit, the match, the way Lila's voice sounded, cracked, raw, asking me what I had done. I told him about the suitcase, the gone quiet house. As I talked, he stared out the window, jaw clenched, a vein ticking near his temple like a small clock. When I finished, he closed his eyes and pressed his fingers to them. For a second, he looked like a boy again. The day our mother died, and he folded in on himself on the porch steps and said, "There's just us now, Nora," he said quietly. "I don't know how to be the villain you need me to be." I flinched. "I don't need a villain. I need this to make sense." "It doesn't," he said. "It never did." He opened his eyes and met mine. "You should have told me. Would it have changed anything?" I asked. His mouth tightened. He didn't answer. The waitress came, oblivious, and set down water with lemon slices that looked too bright like they belonged in another scene. We ordered out of habit, pancakes for him, oatmeal for me, and neither of us ate. "What does she want?" he asked. "I don't know. She's not answering my calls." He sat back and scrubbed a hand over his face. "Claire can't know. Claire, his wife. Practical. Kind Claire with her neat sweaters and sharp eyes. She'd been good to me over the years in ways that now curdled in my mind. I stared at the pepper shaker between us. The tiny holes had been clogged with damp pepper, and I thought, ridiculous, of how often Lila would unscrew lids and knock them clear. "Claire has to know," I said. "This isn't a stain you keep on one shirt. It's in the wash water. Everything touches it." He sighed, long and low. "I have 2 boys, Nora." He said it like a plea. "Their lives were built on a lie," I finished. "Ours too." A song on the radio changed. A soft guitar introduced a chorus about second chances. It was so on the nose I felt offended. I reached for my purse and pulled out a napkin, the paper thin enough to see my fingers through. The napkin shook. My hands shook. Everything about me trembled in that booth. "I need to find her," I said. "If you hear from her," he cut in. "Quick." She called me. The napkin tore in my grip when I asked. My voice came out small. "Last night," he said, eyes flicking to the window and away. From a motel off the interstate, she wanted to hear my voice and hate it. I think. She asked me if I knew. I told her I didn't at the time. I told her, I'm sorry. She hung up. I pressed a palm to my chest like I could steady the ache. What room? Don't do that, he said softly. Dante turned this into a rescue if she isn't ready to be rescued. I'm her mother, and he stopped, swallowed, tried again, and I am the man who can say what I am without choking on it. We paid. We stood in the parking lot. The sky, a white winter sheet, cars sliding past with that wet tire sound against the asphalt. He shoved his hands in his pockets and rocked on his heels like he used to when he didn't know what to do. I'll tell Claire, he said finally. I'll tell her tonight. Do you want me there? I asked. No, he said too quickly. Then, after a beat, it should be me. I owe her that much. We parted with a nod, not forgiveness, not even truce, just a bare agreement to stop running from our own shadows. I drove to the motel anyway. It was a low strip of doors under a flickering sign, the kind of place traveling salesmen and stray heartbreaks pass through. The air smelled like rain and old smoke. I stood outside room 12 for a long time, my breath fogging in little ghosts. When I knocked, I waited through the thin walls of silence until I heard movement. The chain slid, the door opened a few inches, and Lila peered out. Her eyes were swollen. She looked at me the way one looks at a fire, drawn and cautious. Can I come in? I asked. She didn't move. I won't say anything unless you ask, I added. I just want to be in the same room as you. She held my gaze for a long, weighing moment, then unhooked the chain and stepped back. Inside the room had the bland cheer of a place meant to forget itself. Floral bedspread, bolted down TV, a picture of a boat that had never touched water, a plastic cup on the sink, a crumpled wrapper in the trash. Her suitcase stood open on the second bed, clothes folded too neatly. The discipline of someone trying not to unravel. She sat on the edge of the mattress, hands clasped so tight her knuckles blanched. I took the chair by the window. The heater made a thin rattle like loose change. Did you know? She asked finally. Her voice had sand in it. Not at first, I said. I kept my tone even slow. After you were born, time changed. The night became something I kept walking through. Then pieces fell into place, and I swallowed. I chose not to see them. You chose to lie, she said. Yes. She stared at the carpet, at some invisible pattern only she could see. When you held me as a baby, did you ever? She broke off. No, I don't want to know. I nodded. The heater clicked. Somewhere outside, a truck door slammed. I called him, she said after a while. I thought if I heard his voice, I'd know what to do. I didn't. She looked up, and there it was. The dimple I'd once thought was just a sweet accident. Who am I, Mom? The word snapped something in me. Not a defense, not an excuse. A posture I didn't know I'd been holding. You're my daughter, I said. You are mine because I woke up to you. Because I made grilled cheese cut in triangles when you were 5 and crusts off when you were 6. Because I sat outside every choir practice and cried at every concert and kept all your notes in a shoebox under my bed. Biology is a map, Lila. It's not the road. She laughed, a sharp, wet sound. That's pretty, Mom, but the map is the point. It tells you where things came from. It tells you where they started, I said. Not where they end. We sat in the small heat of the room, the air thick with things unsaid. I could feel her anger like static, but also her exhaustion, the way grief wears you to the quick. I'm not calling him Dad, she said. You don't have to call him anything. I paused. He's going to tell Claire tonight. Her eyes widened. You told him to. I told him honesty is the least we owe anyone now. She leaned back and covered her face with her hands. When she spoke, her voice came muffled. The least? She repeated. What's the most? Whatever it takes for you to heal, I said, even if that means you don't speak to me for a while. Even if that means hating me, I can survive your anger. I can't survive your silence. She lowered her hands and studied me, with a kind of reluctant curiosity almost clinical. The nurse in training taking my pulse. You always said our family was small, but solid, she said. We were a triangle. Now it's a hole. It was always a hole, I said softly. I just put flowers over it for the first time since I'd arrived. Her mouth softened. Not forgiveness, not even acceptance, but she saw me. The tired, sorry, stupid human of me, and something in her eyes gentled. I need time, she said. I'll give it, I said, and space. I'll give that too. She stood and moved to the window, peeked through the thin curtain at the parking lot, the cracked white lines, the abandoned cart, the man smoking by a truck cab with a dog curled on the passenger seat. If you're staying, she said, you can take the chair. I'll take the bed. The relief that flooded me was ridiculous, for how small the offer was. I nodded, swallowed careful, and slipped off my shoes. The chair was hard and lumpy. The cushion springs protested my weight. I pulled the thin motel blanket over my knees like a student on a bus ride. We watched a movie where nothing exploded and no one learned anything in 90 minutes. Halfway through, she got up and handed me a bottle of water from the mini fridge without looking at me, and I said thank you like a prayer. When the TV blue screened at the end, the room went soft and quiet. She lay facing the wall, shoulders rounded. I listened to her breathing even out, a rhythm I'd known since the day she came home from the hospital. My phone buzzed on the side table. A message from Ethan told her. She knows. I'm at Mom's old place for the night. Then, after a pause, I'm sorry, Nora. I turned the phone face down and watched the red glow of the heater switch. Somewhere, ice clicked in the pipes. I thought about triangles, about maps and roads and the ugly mercy of truth. In the morning, we checked out together. She didn't ask me to stay, and I didn't ask to follow. In the parking lot, cold breath fogging, she hugged herself and said, I'll text you when I'm ready to talk. I nodded. I'll be here. She tapped her phone in her palm, a nervous little metronome, and then slid into her car. Before she closed the door, she looked at me and said, Don't tell anyone. I won't. I said, It's your story too. She left with the slow caution of someone driving on ice. I watched until her car disappeared around the corner, then stood there a while with my hands open to the air, like I expected the day to put something back in them. At home, the hydrangea bush out front wore brittle petals the color of old paper. I clipped a few and put them in a jar on the kitchen table. A silly ritual of order. Then I walked to the hallway mirror and studied the woman looking back. Grief had rearranged her. Her mouth was set differently, her eyes carrying new shadow. When my phone buzzed again, it was Claire. Can you come over now? 3 words. No punctuation. The kind of message that makes you sit down. I drove across town to Ethan and Claire's house, the tidy yellow one with the big maple in front and 2 scooters splayed in the yard. My hands left damp prints on the steering wheel. When I rang the bell, the door opened before the second chime. Claire stood in the doorway, hair pulled back, cardigan buttoned wrong, a single offset that said more than tears could. Behind her somewhere, I could hear one of the boys upstairs. The thud of a ball hitting a wall in a pattern that would drive her crazy on any other day. She didn't step aside to let me in. She looked at me like a courtroom looks at the accused. Come, she said. Let's talk about what you and my husband have done. The living room smelled faintly of lemon polish and something sour underneath, like milk gone bad. The curtains were open, but the light that came in was gray, cold. Claire didn't offer me a seat. She just stood there, arms folded, her expression so composed it frightened me more than if she'd been shouting. Ethan wasn't there, thank God, or maybe not. Sit, she said finally. I did, perching on the edge of the couch, hands clasped so tightly in my lap that my knuckles turned white. She stood across from me, the distance between us heavy with everything I'd broken. Her voice, when it came, was low but sharp. He told me last night. Every word. I didn't sleep. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't you dare say that. Her tone cracked. Sorry is for forgetting an anniversary, Nora. Not for. She stopped, swallowed, looked away. Not for this. Her composure wavered. Her hands trembled slightly. I saw the moment she realized that anger wouldn't undo what she'd heard. She pressed her fingertips to her temples. I kept thinking there's no version of this where I come out sane. I said nothing, because what was there to say? Finally, she looked at me again. Did you ever think about me? About my children? About what this would do? I didn't think about anyone, I admitted. I was young, grieving, and lost. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. She let out a laugh bitter hollow. Intent doesn't erase damage. I know. Do you? She took a step closer. You had years, Nora. Decades. You saw me hold your daughter. You saw her call him Uncle Ethan. You watched our boys grow up beside her, and you said nothing. Her words hit like slaps, each one deserved. I kept my eyes down, my voice small. I thought I could protect her. Protect her from what? Claire's voice cracked on the word. From knowing who she is, from knowing that everyone she loves is tangled in a lie. She turned away, pacing the room like a caged thing. The floorboards creaked under her bare feet. Then she stopped at the window, shoulders trembling. He said it was one night. A mistake that he didn't know. Do you believe him? I hesitated. Do you? She snapped, spinning back toward me. Yes, I said quietly, I do. Her breath hitched half fury, half grief. Then she looked at me for a long time, her face unreadable. I don't know if that makes it better, she said at last. When I left her house, the sun had started to break through the clouds. Not bright, not warm, just thin streaks of gold on wet pavement. I sat in my car, hands on the steering wheel, staring at the reflection of my face in the rearview mirror. I looked like a ghost of myself. I didn't cry. There were no tears left, just a dull, echoing ache. Later that evening, Ethan called. She told me to leave, he said. His voice was hollow. Took the boys to her sister's. I closed my eyes. I'm sorry. He gave a bitter laugh. Seems like that's the word of the week. Then silence. Do you think she'd forgive me? I hesitated. I think forgiveness isn't about deserving it. Then maybe I'll never get it, he said, and hung up. Days passed like bruises slow to fade, tender to touch. Lila didn't text, Claire didn't call. I went to work, shelved books, nodded through small talk. But my mind was a reel of faces. Lila's when she found out Ethan's at the diner. Claire's in her doorway. At night, I replayed everything, wondering if there had ever been a point where I could have chosen differently. Maybe the moment I saw Ethan that summer and didn't walk away. Maybe when I first realized the truth and convinced myself silence was mercy. But you can't rewind shame. You just live in it until it teaches you something. A week later, a letter arrived. Handwritten, no return address. But I knew her handwriting instantly. Lila. I sat at the kitchen table, the paper trembling in my hands. Her words were neat, deliberate. Mom, I don't know where to start, so I'll start with this. I'm angry. Angry at you, at him, at the universe, for making something so wrong out of two people I loved most. But I also keep remembering the woman who stayed up all night when I was sick, who drove me to every practice, who never once made me feel unwanted. That woman raised me. I can make sense of the two versions of you right now, the mother I love and the stranger who lied. I need time, but I don't want to hate you forever, Lila. I read it again, slower this time. The words cut deep, but they also let light in. I pressed the letter to my chest and whispered, thank you. 2 weeks later, Ethan stopped by. He looked hollowed out, dark circles under his eyes, his once steady hands fidgeting. I'm leaving, he said. Claire filed for separation. I'll go stay with a friend in Nashville. I nodded. Maybe that's best. He stared at me for a moment. Do you ever think we could have done one thing differently and save them all from this? Every day, I said. He gave a small, sad smile. You were always the strong one, Nora. I'm not, I said. I just learned how to carry my ruins quietly. He exhaled, rubbed his face, then turned for the door. Before he left, he said, if she forgives you before she forgives me, tell her I'm sorry. That night, I took Lila's letter and placed it inside my old shoebox, the one filled with her childhood drawings, birthday cards, and tiny paper hearts she used to cut out for me on Mother's Day. I sat cross-legged on the floor and whispered to the empty room. I forgive myself. It didn't feel complete, but it felt like a start. 3 months passed. Spring came, and with it, the hydrangeas bloomed again, blue this time, not the faded white of winter. I was wiping down library shelves when I heard someone say my name softly. I turned, and there she was, Lila. Her hair was shorter, her face calmer. She was holding a paper cup of coffee, 2 sugars just how I liked it. Hey, Mom, she said. My heart stuttered. I got your letter, I said. She nodded. I thought about burning it, but then I thought, maybe it's part of the map. I smiled faintly. The map again. She shrugged. You were right, though. It doesn't have to be the road. We stood there in silence, the kind that doesn't ache anymore. Then she said, can we walk? Just talk a bit. And just like that, something inside me unclenched. We walked along the river trail behind the library. The air smelled like wet grass and sunlight on stone. She talked about school, about maybe transferring to a program in Louisville. She didn't mention Ethan, and I didn't ask. At one point, she stopped and said, I still don't understand you. I don't either sometimes, but I think I still love you. It was barely more than a whisper, but it was enough. I reached for her hand, hesitant, waiting, and, when she didn't pull away, I knew the healing had begun. For a while, our story stayed inside the house, whispered, hidden, wrapped in the soft tissue of secrecy. But secrets, once they've tasted air, develop a hunger of their own. It started with a rumor. Someone from Claire's church had heard something. She didn't say what, just that it was unholy. Then someone else saw Ethan's truck gone from the driveway for weeks. By the time I went to the grocery store one Sunday morning, the whispers had faces. I felt them before I saw them. The way conversation would hush when I walked past the frozen food aisle. The way a woman from the library board crossed to another checkout line when she saw me. Even the cashier, sweet little Hannah, who used to chat with me about books, couldn't meet my eyes. Small towns have long memories and short mercy. I didn't defend myself. What would I even say? That I hadn't meant for any of it? That I loved my daughter so fiercely it blinded me to the truth? Those aren't the kind of words you speak into gossip. They sound like excuses, and excuses rot on contact. So I stopped going out for a while. I ordered groceries online. I took my shifts at the library's back desk, where no one could see me through the glass. But still, it reached Lila. People whispered at her college, 2 classmates, professors even. Careful but curious. Are you okay? They'd ask, with that tilted head pity that feels more like judgment. One night she called me. Mom, she said, her voice trembling. They know. I don't know how, but they know. My stomach sank. What happened? I was at the cafe. 2 girls were laughing. I heard one of them say your name, then mine. I walked out before they finished. A pause, then, quieter. I hate this. I closed my eyes. Do you want me to come get you? No, she said firmly. I need to not be the girl with that story. Her words gutted me. Because I'd done that, I'd made her a headline, a cautionary tale whispered between cups of coffee. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail from the library's board. They called it temporary leave for personal matters. I knew what it really meant. I folded the letter neatly, slid it into the drawer beside Leela's first school photo, and sat in silence for a long time. The house creaked around me like an old confession. That evening, Ethan called again. He sounded different, quieter, humbled in a way I'd never heard before. I've been talking to Pastor Reed, he said, about making it right. Making it right, I repeated, almost bitterly. And how do you do that, Ethan? How do you make this right? He sighed. By not hiding anymore. By facing what we did. I wanted to tell him that facing it wouldn't fix anything. That sometimes the only justice is surviving your own guilt. But part of me knew he was right. Shame grows in darkness. Maybe light, even harsh light, could burn it clean. The next Sunday, I went to church. For the first time in months. The pews were full, as they always were. The air smelled of wood polish and candle smoke. When I walked in, heads turned, a ripple through the congregation. Some faces looked away, others didn't. Ethan was already there, sitting near the front, his posture rigid, hands clasped tight. When he saw me, his expression softened, not in forgiveness, but in shared ruin. After the service, he stood. Before anyone could leave, he asked to speak. His voice trembled. There's something I need to say, something we need to stop hiding. You could feel the air tighten. The pastor nodded solemnly and stepped back. Ethan spoke. He didn't go into details, but he told the truth about the mistake, the guilt, the years of silence, about how secrets eat you from the inside, and how forgiveness is never deserved, only hoped for. When he finished, no one clapped. No one said a word. The silence was holy and terrible. I walked to the front, my knees shaking, and stood beside him. I didn't add much, just one sentence. I have lived in shame for 21 years. Today, I choose to live in truth. Then, I walked out. Outside, the sky was wide and mercilessly blue. I breathed it in like punishment and release, all at once. In the weeks that followed, people didn't exactly forgive, but the whispers softened. A few kind souls brought casseroles, some avoided eye contact, but nodded politely. That was enough. Silence, I learned, can be cruel, but it can also be merciful. Lila came home one weekend. She stood in the doorway with a duffel bag slung over her shoulder. I heard what you did, she said. At church. I didn't want them to find out from rumors, I said. I wanted to say it myself. She nodded slowly. It was brave. I smiled faintly. It was necessary. We sat together on the porch, watching the wind move through the hydrangeas. She told me she'd decided to finish nursing school. She wanted to work in trauma care. Help people who survive things that should have broken them, she said. Her words hit me deep, because that's exactly what we were doing in our own way. That night, she asked, "Do you ever talk to him?" Sometimes, I admitted. He's in counseling. Trying to rebuild what he can. She looked down. Do you hate him? No, I said after a long silence. Hate is heavy. I've carried enough, she nodded, thoughtful. I don't know if I'll ever see him again. That's okay, I said. You don't owe anyone forgiveness, not even me. She looked at me then, really looked at me. And in her eyes, there wasn't hate. There wasn't love either. Not yet, but there was something that looked a lot like peace. It's been 5 years since that day. The world didn't end. It just got smaller, quieter, humbler. I never went back to the library. Instead, I started volunteering at a shelter downtown, reading to women who'd lost homes, children, pieces of themselves. Sometimes they asked about my past, and I told them pieces. Not all, but enough. They didn't flinch. Pain recognizes pain. Ethan lives alone now. He and Claire finalized the divorce, but she's forgiven him enough to let him see their boys. He calls on birthdays, holidays, just enough to remind me we both survived. And Leela, she's 26 now, works in a trauma ward, still hums when she's deep in thought. Sometimes she stays the weekend, helps me garden, drinks tea in the evenings while we watch the sun sink behind the fields. We don't talk about that night anymore, but sometimes when the air is quiet and the light turns soft, she glance at me and say, "You okay, Mom?" And I'll say, "Yeah, baby, I'm okay." And for the first time in years, I mean it. I've spent a long time thinking about what forgiveness really means. For years, I thought it was something you earned through good deeds, through confession, through time. But now I know it isn't earned at all. It's given. Sometimes by others, sometimes, if you're lucky, by yourself. When I look back on my life, I don't see one moment that destroyed us. I see a chain, small choices, quiet denials. Moments I told myself it's better not to know. and each one built the wall that separated me from truth. That's the thing about secrets. They start as protection, a soft blanket over something too ugly to face. But over time, that blanket becomes a shroud, and the person you meant to protect suffocates under it. I thought I was shielding my daughter from shame. But what I was really doing was shielding myself from guilt. And guilt, it doesn't disappear just because you hide it. It waits. It waits until you think you've built something safe, and then it shakes the walls. I've learned that love without honesty isn't love at all. It's dependency. It's fear. It's quiet self-destruction. When I told Lila the truth, I lost the version of her that trusted me completely. But I gained something else, a chance to love her as the woman she truly is, not the fantasy I built out of my own lies. And that's the lesson I want you to hear. If you're still with me after all this time, you cannot build peace on a foundation of silence. Truth will find its way through the cracks, and when it does, it will hurt, but it will also heal. Sometimes when the house is quiet and the night air moves through the open window, I hear the echo of Leela's laughter from when she was little. Back then, I thought motherhood was about protection. Now I know it's about courage. The courage to tell the truth even when it costs you everything. If you asked me today whether I regret telling her, I'd say no. I regret the lie, not the truth. Because the truth, no matter how ugly, is the only thing that ever set me free. We're still rebuilding, slowly, tenderly. Forgiveness didn't come as a wave. It came as rain. Small drops over time, washing away what shame left behind. And when she visits now, she always brings coffee for two. She sits across from me, curls one leg under herself like she used to when she was a teenager, and says, "Mom, do you ever think we'll be normal again?" And I tell her, maybe not normal, baby, but we'll be whole. If you re-listening to this story and there's something you buried, something you tell yourself is better left unsaid, I want you to ask yourself this. Are you protecting them? Or are you protecting yourself? Because the truth has a way of surviving. Even buried under years of silence, it breathes. And one day it'll knock on your door whether you're ready or not. I won't pretend that facing it will fix everything. It won't, but it's the first honest step toward peace. And peace. Real peace doesn't come from being blameless. It comes from being brave. So, tonight, when you lay your head down, I want you to think about the people you love and the things you never told them. Maybe it's time to let the truth breathe. Maybe it's time to stop hiding behind the comfort of secrecy. Because at the end of all this, after the tears, the guilt, the whispers, I found something I never expected to find again. I found myself, and I found a version of my daughter who could look me in the eyes even knowing the worst of me and still say, "I love you anyway." That's grace. And grace isn't clean. It's messy, it's painful, but it's real. And that's enough. Would you have told her the truth if you were me? Would you have carried the lie a little longer, hoping love could hide it? Tell me what you would have done down in the comments. And if my story touched something in you tonight, maybe, just maybe, share it with someone who still believes secrets can't hurt them, because they can. But truth can heal. Thank you for listening. This was my story, and I hope in some small way, it helps you face yours.